Good evening, everybody. Welcome to episode 46 of the SMB Talks. It's been a while since I've done this. I feel like I'm doing it for the first time, but I'm back and I have a lot of amazing guests lined up for this month. It's going to be a fantastic month. Happy August. I hope everybody is staying safe and sound at this point of time. Coronavirus is still around. I wanted to take a break in July. It was my birthday, and I wanted to figure out what I want to achieve by doing the show. Like a lot of my friends started talking to me about monetizing this show, etc., which I have no intention at this point of time. At this point of time, the SMB Talks is where inspiring folks come on as guests and we ask them questions and we pick their brains so that we kind of get inspired by their journey. So today, talking about inspiration, I have an amazing inspiring personality with me. I've got amazing folks on the show. If you have watched SMB Talks in the past, this is episode 46. We have met so many inspiring people. So today I have a different kind of gentleman with me. Okay, he's a young kid from where I look at him. So he's a young kid. He is passed out of IIT Delhi, right? He's none other than Abhishek Gupta. He's the founder of Nava Gurukul. So as I mentioned, he's an IIT Delhi grad. He graduated as a software engineer. He earlier has co-founded Zumbi, is a startup which was acquired, followed by Frankly Me, which raised more than $2.6 million. So if you think that's impressive, wait for it. He founded a social enterprise called Nava Gurukul. So what does it do? That we are going to hear all about Nava Gurukul from him, but let me give you an interesting take on this, right? So it works on an aspirational employment opportunities for young women from rural and tribal India. So what he does is small team. He himself is a very young chap. What they do is they train people, women especially from rural India, from underprivileged backgrounds, on coding skills, and they place them at better career opportunities. So I must say, this guy is a Forbes 30 under 30 also, and he's an amazing. So let me just bring him on. Hey,
Hi,
Abhishek.
Vivek. Hey,
Hey. Thank you so much for taking time out and joining the SMB Talks. I am so happy you are here. How are you doing?
doing well. So when you said actually, kid, this sounded funny in my head because I'm getting married next month. So this transition from, you know,
I
so
know,
yeah,
I know. These are the times when kids are also getting married. Kind of. So don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Anyway, I'm so happy. I'm so happy that you are here, and I have been following your work for some time now. I have had friends such as this co-founder of Milan Foundation here. They also do a fabulous job. I
right.
get so inspired by folks like you. So thank you for coming on board. So just to give a background, Abhishek, this show I started when COVID came into our lives. That was last year, and I started this show so that I can bring on people like you, talk about your journey, so that we all can get some sort of inspiration, for us to move on. So to grab onto that, So it is a set of. I've curated a set of 10 to 15
Yeah,
questions for you, and if you're ready, we can start off.
absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. So for the first question I wanted to ask you, if I would have met you in person, I would have asked the same question. You are an IIT graduate, and now you are a social entrepreneur. Normally, it doesn't work that way. IIT guys go to US or they work in startups, earning lakhs and lakhs of salaries and stuff like that. How did this thing happen? And take us through that journey.
Yeah, I think I absolutely agree. IIT degree can be a big liability if you don't want to do what you're supposed to do. For example, earning crores right now, and it did lead to a lot of friction because people around me they were not very comfortable with the idea of sort of doing that, and that exactly came into my mind. Like does my degree really serve as a liability to me, or is it an asset? And if it is an asset, let me use it in whatever I do. So if I want to travel, let me use my degree to sort of do something around there. And there are some very interesting folks from our college who essentially did that. One of my seniors, he was heavily interested into traveling, traveled a lot, became Iron Man, raised money for climbing Mount Everest. And then he essentially started an organization called Fitso in travel space, which was acquired by Zomato. So
Right.
I think somewhere some people have started seeing your college like that, right? I mean, it's just a stepping stone to whatever you want to do, and what you may want to do might not be either making a lot of money or may not be essentially starting a company altogether.
Right.
So I think so that was that. But if I sort of look into my own reasons and ignore the societal part here, um, so when I was doing startups, I think I was doing them largely because I was insecure. I wanted to prove myself. I wanted to do something that most of my peers hadn't. And IIT is a very crazy place to do that because most of your peers have done so many things that it's very hard to find what they have not done. And I think somewhere I was this sort of rebel kid that I'm not going to sort of focus on a job. I'll never sit for college placements. So let me start doing a startup instead. And I started doing this in 2011, where startups were not very cool. In fact, Zomato was one of the very few startups which was very popular, again,
Right.
because of IIT Delhi connection. But apart from that, there were no big names that used to sort of float around. Then Snapdeal happened, and Rohit was also part of Snapdeal, and he was an IIT Delhi alumnus. Um, so I think somewhere around that startups were not very popular. So I just thought it's probably a way for me to express my rebelling.
Right.
And I just started doing my startup without really thinking why am I doing that, to be honest. And then it got acquired, and it got funded, acquired. Then another startup got funded. We raised a lot of money. And there was this time we were acquiring another startup, and I asked the founder, "Hey, what do you come office for? Like, what motivates you to work?" And he told me, he wants this, he wants that, and I think his answer made a lot of sense for him. He had to work, but then he asked me, what motivates you to work? And it was very interesting because we were in US, Google Launchpad Accelerator, and we were about to acquire another company. And then suddenly I didn't have any answer to that question, and I started thinking, like, what actually keeps me in startup? So um, I didn't need to prove myself anymore. There were a lot of things that I have already done. Right? So that element was not there. There were a lot of questions around finances, right? I mean, especially because your peers are earning a lot, they're buying a Merc or whatever around. So those questions were definitely there, and I had my own journey which I can probably share. But I resolved the problem of finances. Then I realized that probably I'm here because I've committed to be a part of this team, and ultimately my heart lies in doing work on ground. So that was the moment I decided to quit startups for good and focus on social sector. So I started working with Delhi government, and that's where working over there, I realized that Nav Gurukul, the problem that we solve here is sort of very important and needs attention.
Right. Amazing. Amazing. And seriously, man, these are kind of things which I wanted to do in my 20s, but we were focused on credit card, job, marriage, girl, this and that. So, I'm so happy to hear this coming from, somebody like you. All right. So my next question, so you said that you wanted to get into social space, etc. What made you start something amazing like Navagurukul? What was the trigger?
So when I was working with Delhi government, we saw students who were doing very well in schools, probably scoring 80%, 90% or more. And I feel that was a lot to be able to achieve, especially from the family that they were coming from. They didn't have access to tuitions, they didn't have access to, let's say, some of the things that we take for granted. Even the schools are not proper in shape. Um, and yet after schools, they didn't have hope at all. Like I would talk to them and they're like, maybe school ke baad hum data entry job kar lenge. There was a student called Shivam, whom we met. He was earning 5,000 rupees at a local bakery while earning 30 days a month, almost 12 hours a day. And this
Wow.
guy essentially got around 80-85% in school and got very, very diligent, someone who's very, very hardworking. And he was saving money from this 5,000 rupees salary that he was getting from bakery and still working at his house to learn basically computers.
Right.
And from my own journey, I sort of knew that learning computers is not so hard. In fact, probably working in a setup like his was so much harder than what software engineers ever would do. So that's where the idea came. Instead of, let's say, going through the colleges, which is essentially an extremely broken system. In fact, as per reports, 93% of our college graduates are not even considered employable. So we
Right.
thought of designing our own system, which works frugally, which works at scale, and can ensure 100% placement rates to whosoever comes in. So some of these student interactions were the major push behind it. And now when we work at Navgurukul, I think every day is the sort of push for the next day.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Amazing, amazing. Right. So some of the people who might be watching now or maybe watch the YouTube video later, they might not be aware what Nav Gurukul is. So if you can explain the concept, it's a fantastic concept. If you can explain the concept of Nav Gurukul to them, that'll be fantastic.
So to give some context, so we started about 5 years ago. Our mission when we started 5 years ago is fairly simple. We wanted to have an alternative to college where we guarantee placements, where the cost is sort of affordable, and the courses actually should be provided free of cost to the student, and
Right.
probably they should pay forward so that when someone new joins, their expenses are already taken care of. So those are the
Right.
initial ideas we started with. We already have 4 centers across the country with almost 700 students in our campuses right now in residential centers.
Wow.
So they all learn software programming, they get jobs. The entry-level jobs are basically starting from 20,000 or so, but many of our students are also earning 70, 80,000 rupees after 2 or 3 years of experience. And to sort of give some example here, so some of these students are basically coming from extremely marginalized families. Actually, not some, all of them. So most of our girls are coming from rural and tribal areas. Many of them are coming from HIV positive, I mean, they're HIV positive, or they're coming from red light areas. So essentially, there's a huge diversity. In fact, we have students from almost 18 different states of the country. We have girls coming in from Sikkim, Tripura, Assam, Kashmir to our
Wow.
centers in Bangalore and Pune. In fact, right now I'm in Tripura. We are opening a center here in February coming year. Um,
Wow.
so there's a lot of diversity that we have created in the campus, and all of these students, they're basically children of people who are probably earning 5,000 a month or 10,000 rupees a month. And now these students are not just getting, let's say, a lot more income, but then these girls are also becoming the centers of how the decisions are going to be made in the family. None of our
Right.
students who have gotten jobs, none of our alumni, female alumni, have been married, whereas most of our dropouts have gotten married already. They actually got married within 3 to 6 months of when they dropped out.
Right.
They're gaining more agency in terms of how they take up their life further. Um,
Right.
so that's essentially what we started with. We recently started a course on design because ultimately we want to focus on colleges. So software is just one part. We started a design course, and we are going to add one more course every year. Um, Apart from that, we have an online application through which we teach programming to similar demographic but at a larger scale. One of the key innovations that we have done over there is that we buy a 100 rupees keyboard for the student. They connect that keyboard to the phone, and then they use their phone to type. They learn typing, programming, English all through their phone with that keyboard. And
Wow.
I feel that keyboard is very interesting and important because then they can have a more computer-like experience without
Right.
actually having a desktop or a laptop. They can actually learn how to type without seeing the screen through the courses that we have designed just by through
Right.
this 100 rupees investment that they have to do. And
Right.
we actually get them these keyboards for free. So
Right.
that's the second part of Navgurukul. Then the third part of Navgurukul is something that we call Code India Fellowship, where we are identifying bright coding fellows from across the country, especially from colleges which are in top leagues, and then basically getting the students to go into tier 3 colleges or tier 2 colleges of the country and change and build the programming culture over there. And essentially, they can use all the support that we have, which is in terms of curriculum, placements, and everything. So all that support will be extended to these colleges so as to bring transformation from the colleges as well, because they already exist and a lot of infrastructure is there, a lot of money is being spent already. So that's
Right.
the third important initiative. And the fourth and the final initiative that we essentially are working on is something that we call Navgurukul Labs. As a part of Navgurukul Labs, we're launching tech products. So one of the products that we launched just yesterday was something called yellowjobs.org. You can actually look out for remote jobs and get jobs across the world, essentially through that platform. But the idea of that uh, of Navgurukul Labs is to sort of churn out technical non-profits, which essentially make sure that some of the services which are available today are essentially available in a more conscious format. For example, we are also building an alternative to Uber and Ola, where people can actually directly use that application to book cabs without paying any commission at all because it's a non-profit driven technology. So our approach is very simple. The idea of this labs is very simple that if you look at the non-profit ecosystem across the world, there have been initiatives like Wikipedia, Khan Academy, etc., but they are unfortunately far fewer and rare in numbers, right? So we're
Right.
essentially creating those initiatives in large numbers and hoping that some will scale up. And for every initiative, we're creating different team of founders and the technical and the non-technical team. and essentially making sure that they share the distribution with each other so that they grow together. So these are the four
Right.
main buckets. So a lot is happening. I hope I didn't confuse
No,
everyone.
no, no, it's absolutely fantastic. I can sense that energy coming from you when you're talking about all these initiatives. These are very close to your heart. Fantastic, amazing. So, my next question, you started Nav Gurukul in 2016, if I'm not wrong, right?
Yep. Yep.
So, how has the journey been so far? What kind of impact Nav Gurukul could make in last 5 years?
So, I mean, as a journey, it has been extremely, I think, emotionally challenging, particularly. I mean, obviously, roller coaster is the default answer that everyone's supposed to give, but I think emotionally challenging largely because when you're making, let's say, a startup and a tech product or whatever, you're typically not very close to the people you're sort of working with. There's certain distance that you have. But when we started Navgurukul, we literally stayed with the students for 3 years.
Right,
So many of the students who are basically now working in companies, we essentially stayed full time with them, observed, learned from them a lot. So I spent about 2 years of my life from somewhere around 2017 and to 2019 in our girls' campus in Bangalore. We essentially I was sort of figuring out how do we essentially set those things up, and it was a very challenging time. There were many issues that they faced just because they were girls, they were eve teased, harassed, and whatnot. So we had to
right,
sort of get into things that we never expected that we will be getting into. We operationally got very involved, emotionally got very involved. Um, so I think as a period, it has been sort of emotionally very, very different than anything else I've ever done in my life. Last 1 year, it has been a little different because we are scaling up. So there's a lot more distance, let's say, between me and the student that we are working with because there's a lot bigger team right now, almost 35 people versus, let's say, the 4 people that we had just a year ago. So we have been scaling up crazy in last 1 year. So that has created some distance between me and my students, which makes it emotionally easier to work on, but also sometimes less satisfying, honestly. Working with student has its own charm where you
right,
sort of do a lot. It was essentially going back to college for me.
right.
Actually, much better than college, to be honest. Like I'm not very fond of my experience with IIT, uh, to be honest here. Um, in terms of the impact, we have had more than 160 alumni who have gotten jobs that I just described about. Many of them got jobs at companies like Mindtree, ThoughtWorks, DirectEye, and Academy,
Wow.
and many other basically big for-profits as well as startups as well as non-profits. And I think just a year ago, we were a very small organization. We just had 4 employees. We had just a capacity of 80 people. So, and the course is long. We basically spent about 1 to 1.5 years. So we
Right.
could only do 2 batches until a year ago. The first 1.5 years, we mostly spent on pilot to understand what we're doing. And then we did 2 batches. And now we're scaling up rapidly, as I mentioned. So right now we have close to 700 students.
Right.
And we are adding 200 students every 2 to 3 months. So the
Right.
idea is to reach at least 5,000 student capacity in next 3 years and make sure that you're also supporting other colleges through the Code India Fellowship as well.
Amazing, amazing. You have such a young team. I know one of your team members, Mr. Rahul, he had
Yeah,
liked my tweet when I posted about you are coming on the show. So just say my hello to him. All right.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
talking about your students, I'm very very much. I had so many questions to ask there. Then I had to reduce it because I can't keep you here forever. So coming to students, you said that they come from underprivileged communities and very diverse communities. How do you choose them? How does the admission process work?
Yeah, admission process has been the hardest problem that we have had to solve as an organization,
Right,
largely because it's not just a process of selection, but also it's a process of convincing them to be able to join our center for more than a year in a residential
right,
format. And these are girls from families who have themselves not even been outside the villages, right? So
right,
let's say imagine you have never been outside your village, and now you're being asked to send your daughter to a destination which is probably 3 days away from your house, right? I mean,
right,
imagine you're in Bihar and you have to send your daughter to Bangalore. So it's not a flight distance for you. It's
right,
almost 3 days of train distance and then buses and whatnot to reach the campus.
right,
Um, so it's a lot to ask for from the parents. It's a lot to ask from the students themselves, right? I mean, because they themselves have never been outside. So
absolutely,
they also get a lot of cold feet and they feel kya hoga, kaise rahenge parents se bina. And many of them do end up dropping because of some reasons like that.
right,
They can't sort of adjust a lot to the new surroundings that they're getting. Um, so one, I mean, obviously, there's this problem of them not wanting to do it, and we have
right,
to convince them for it. to make sure that they understand that this is going to be transformational for them. And initially, it was much harder because we didn't have success stories, we didn't have role models. Fortunately, now it's much
Right.
easier because we have students who are doing really, really well. They have gotten some amazing videos. One of our students, Rani, she gave a Josh talk with 6 lakh views. We use her video a lot to sort of talk about how Rani navigated this, how Kajal navigated this. Her video just came yesterday on Josh. Um, so essentially, there's a lot of content and success stories that we can use today. But then we also have some kind of entrance examination. It's a very basic entrance examination where we first test for maths. We check for basically 8th grade maths understanding so that they should be able to solve basic problems. Because
Right.
ultimately they're going to learn software programming. And if they don't even
Yeah.
know basic mathematics, they're going to struggle and we will not be able to guarantee them jobs. And our entire
Right.
program works on guaranteeing a job. We guarantee job to each and every student who comes to our campus. Then we do a basic English test where we basically just look for very conversational, simple English. If they can just, sort of talk it, right? I mean, even if they can just simply introduce themselves in broken English, that's okay. That's a reasonably okay level. And the third and the very important round is a culture fit interview where we check for the hunger in the belly, where we check if they really want to do this, if they are really, sort of invested in making it happen. Because our thesis is very simple. Once they are into our campus, not only are we going to guarantee them a job, but we are going to trust them infinitely. We don't work on a college model where we have teachers sitting on your head, or we don't even have teachers actually. We don't have teachers, we don't have classrooms, we don't have classes, we don't have examinations. So when you're building a system like that, it all relies on you being able to trust the individuals you're working with.
Right.
And somewhere the culture fit interview is really critical part of that. To essentially ensure that we have the right kind of people invested into our program.
Absolutely. It's I can imagine the kind of effort you might have put into to build these procedures and processes
Yeah.
in place. It's really,
And
it
especially the
sounds
diversity,
challenging.
right? I mean, getting students from 18 different states, managing all the logistics, making sure they're able to do our entrance examinations while being in a village, not having access to a smartphone, being able to give our interviews, scheduling the interviews with people, right? I mean, just
Right.
scheduling itself is a huge problem because they don't have their own phones. So dealing with,
Right.
let's say, a family member's phone who might not be even aware what's going on.
Right.
So,
Right.
so
And also,
technically, it's very, very challenging. Yeah.
absolutely. Also, the hesitation which you mentioned, somebody from
Yeah.
Assam coming all the way to Bangalore.
Yeah.
It's that's I
Yeah.
don't know how you're making it happen. How
Yeah.
you're convincing the parents. It's unbelievable. All right. So I have seen several videos of your alumni kids whose lives have changed. It's so amazing the way they speak and the way they are confident on the video. They're coming and talking about what they have achieved. Can you share a couple of success stories that are very very close to your heart?
I think pretty much all of them, to be honest. And especially since I was very, very close to the batch. So I pretty much knew, I still know what they are up to. So I think it's emotionally sort of, almost all of them I'm deeply connected to. But there are a few obviously which stands out and which you are used to repeating. So one of them I remember, I don't feel I'm a very confident individual, especially when I have to speak at some place. I speak way too fast and people hardly get what I'm speaking. So I remember me and one of my students, we went to give a Josh talk, um, and they recorded both of us, and they didn't publish me because I couldn't sort of make it through their quality benchmarks, and she did. That was a very proud moment, right? I mean, when you do not, you cannot pass, and the student can. So then,
Amazing.
many of our students, we basically, so we had a partnership Mindtree where they just wanted to pilot with few students. So they had already selected a few, and they wanted to select one more. So we went with three girls over there, and they were basically going to select one of them. And and then the senior person from my industry, Prashant, he was essentially interviewing them, just talking to them, and he just felt that they were so confident. He's like, "Sorry, I can't interview them. They're going to take all three." You know, and they didn't even do the technical interview, and all three of them actually did pretty well. One of the girls, Kajal, when she actually joined Mindtree, so Prashant just said, I want her to join here. She just have to be here. And so then the HR process started, and she obviously didn't have degrees. Most of our students do not have degrees. But beyond that, she was actually just 17 and a half. So Mindtree had a policy that they can only take people who are 21 and above. So they actually changed that for Kajal for 17 and a half years. I mean, she was actually just a 10th pass student. Um,
Absolutely.
her father was basically was a rickshaw driver. Her mother was a maid. She comes from Delhi, and now she works at Mindtree. She I think earns around 5 to 6 lakhs a year or so. I'm not sure about the exact amount, but doing exceedingly well. Her sister is also now learning at Navgurukul. She's I think in Pune campus. The change is sort of, I think it's crazy. I mean, people sort of, and there's this very interesting student, and he came and he said, it was very initial time, and he said, I want to learn here. And we said, okay, fine, you get a 20,000 job here. And we got to know that he was already working at a 18,000 job as CCD. And so we said, what's the benefit, right? I mean, you're at 18K, probably you'll go to 20K. How will it help you? And he said, I actually want to get married to a girl, and she's a caste higher than me. And I cannot get married unless I have a white collar job, right? So it's not just money here. It's a much larger issue here. And India that way, unfortunately, is sort of a little more tight in terms of what position do people hold in society, or how much respect do they get based on the jobs that they do. So it's a lot related to their class. It's heavily related to their aspirations, right? I mean, so when our girls got into Mindtree, they essentially met Subrata Baki, who was who's one of the co-founders at Mindtree, and he met them and he was blown away, and he said, like, I really want to start a center right away. But then Mindtree was acquired by L&T, and then some changes happened. But the kind of confidence that they had, I still do not have. Like, if there was this another event, I and one of my students, we went, and Sachin Bansal was standing there, and we're like, should I go and talk to him? And by the time I was thinking about it, my student actually, he went and he started talking to him. So I think in terms of confidence, I hardly sort of exhibited a lot. Just that I think what I was sort of endowed with was that I could trust my students a lot more. There was this time we were going from Delhi to Bangalore. 9 of our girls were basically shifting from our Delhi campus to Bangalore campus. And then so we were essentially thinking, what do we do? So then I just jokingly told my person who was basically taking them that, can you essentially maybe ask them to do life mapping sessions in all the coaches? And life mapping sessions are very intense sessions where you sit in a group and you basically ask people to share their journeys. It's very emotional. And I just joked. They actually started doing life mapping sessions in the coaches that train, in a sleeper train, right? So that level of confidence, right? I mean, there's just one another example. I think I'll probably close it, but I can just keep going on for hours and hours and hours.
I know.
Yeah, so when I was in college, I used to teach students, and I failed miserably. Like, I could not teach young people. I think it's easier for me to teach older people, or people who, let's say, teach senior level mathematics. Let's say if I have to teach someone how do you add 2 plus 3, I struggle. Or how do you learn what is ABC, I struggle. And I think it's a very hard thing to do. Just that we sort of oversimplify it, and that's why I ask children to learn or just rote learn them. But if you really want students to understand like what 3 into 3 actually means, it's not trivial. But when our students started volunteering, they actually were not just teaching the students, they started teaching their parents. So when we were teaching in our college, in IIT, there was this saying that if you're teaching students, it's probably okay, you're doing okay. If you end up teaching their mothers, you've done a far better job. You could attract their mothers to sort of learn, who have far more inhibitions than students will ever have.
Absolutely.
And if you can teach the dads, you're God, you cannot go beyond that. Because somewhere, right? I mean, and you're getting them to be taught through people who are far younger than them, and they don't want to be learned. They don't feel that education is going to be useful to them. They understand that education is useful to their children. Most of them do not believe education is going to be useful to them at that age. And our students, within a week, they were teaching their mothers as well as the dads. So some of these things, I mean, we could sort of see that they're far, far better and brighter than most of us. And I think the dream that we share is very simple, that we want this organization to be entirely led and driven by our own alumni. In fact, more than half of our own team is actually our own alumni. And we are continuously trying to figure out their growth journey so that ultimately, like probably next year or 2 years later, when you talk, the CEO is not me, but one of our own students.
Right. I know that I saw your team. Some of them are Nav Gurukul alumni itself. That's fabulous. Actually.
Yeah, more than half actually. Yeah.
That's fabulous. All right. So let's talk about, you already touched upon this, about the programs you have already designed. So there are multiple programs that you run. The first one which caught my attention was the residential program. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about it?
So as I mentioned, in residential program, the focus is on guaranteeing a job which is aspirational in nature. We started with software because we knew software. The students come, there are no teachers, no classrooms. So there are classrooms, but there are no classes basically.
Right.
For example, there's no schedule that आज आपको इस teacher कितने बजे class लेनी है, ऐसा कुछ नहीं होता. When the student joins, let's say if I join Navgurukul today, I'm going to be assigned a mentor. Let's say you are 3 months or 4 months senior to me. You'll be assigned a mentor. You'll be assigned as a mentor to me. That's also done through TNP, or the Training and Placement Coordinator, who's himself or herself a student. We're
Right.
largely focusing on women right now. So almost 90% of our students are women these days. But let's say this Training and Placement Coordinator assigns Vivek as mentor to Abhishek. Now there's a curriculum that we have developed, which is available in local language. We have Hindi and English. We are adding more languages right now. So the idea is that then Abhishek will basically start working on this curriculum, which is divided into 18 different milestones. And Vivek supports him to do those milestones wherever Abhishek is stuck, wherever he needs help. And that help is not just limited to technical aspects, but also it happens more of a in a very sisterly manner, basically. It's someone where Vivek is able to share that how he struggled and how that struggle that I am facing right now, it's totally okay, and it's genuinely, it's a different system, and all of that, and a lot of emotional effort. So one of the things that we realize over here is that even if people are physically sick, they can study, but if they're emotionally not feeling well, they'll be extremely distracted and they'll not be able to learn. They may hold a book like that for 5 hours, but what they learn will be nothing. So they essentially, take care of their emotional well-being also. If they're going through a big crisis, then they essentially make sure that they're reported, not reported per se, but essentially the program manager knows so that they can essentially get a counselor on board too. So we have basically counselors who are working with us to counsel students who are basically going through some kind of crisis situation or need any kind of therapy for doing better in their careers or life. So then the students keep passing these milestones and they can request for an interview. And according to the interview, the student basically get to know how well they're doing. There are no marks that are given to them. It's purely subjective. We send something called the good, bad, and ugly. We share the feedback. Oh, this was good. This was bad. This is ugly. And this is a format that we use even as an organization. So when we send monthly updates to our donors or our friends and volunteers, etc., we do not send a shiny newsletter about saying हमने ये inaugurate किया, हमने वो inaugurate किया. It's basically a very vulnerable piece of article from our side, of which I personally write every single month, where we share what are the good things that happened, but what are also the bad things that are happening that we need to fix, and what are some of the ugly things that we need to really, really think about. So it's a way for us to be vulnerable with the people we are talking with, without giving numbers to ourselves. Oh, we did 8 out of 10 this month. So similarly, we adapted that format for our team, and the same format we use for student evaluation also. And then the students, whenever they are ready, they may take 4 months, they may take 1 year, they may take 18 months, it does not matter. The moment they're ready for jobs as per our curriculum, we basically get companies for them to be interviewed at. Most of the companies who we basically work with, they approached us because they felt that our students hold promise for their, for these positions. And yeah, so that's the entire life cycle, and then they get jobs, and we support them afterwards as well.
Right.
And then since some of the students basically pay forward once they get a job. So I think just 3 days ago, one of the students, she donated 50K, who's actually one of our own alumni. There are more than, I think, 8 alumni who have already donated 1.2 lakhs rupees back into the system, which is more than what we spent on them. So essentially, we are also trying to create this alumni-driven sustainability.
Fantastic. It's amazing to hear this. The kind of things kids are capable of doing, right? So coming from such a background, they might have seen a lot of, I don't know what kind of things, but coming out of it and making a life for themselves, getting the confidence back, amazing. Okay, the second program that I wanted to discuss with you is, if I don't know whether I'm saying it correctly, it's Meraki.
Yeah,
Meraki, your app-based learning. So can you just talk a little bit about that?
So so when we were basically working during the pandemic time last year, especially, we were continuing with our residential centers, but we also felt that we need an online way of teaching or reaching out to the students. And this was an observation that we also had pre-pandemic. I mean, we knew that the many students were not able to join Navgurukul because they couldn't clear our entrance test, but they essentially want to be taught and they have the potential to join it at a later point. So to give you an example, when we did our test drive with Maharashtra government, we were working with the tribal research department over there. So these are girls who are coming from extremely remote areas with very limited access to education. So out of the 4,200 girls who gave our test, only 104 were selected. So that was a selection ratio somewhere around 2.6 or 2.7%. And obviously, it was not something that we wanted it to be. I mean, we wanted it to be much better. And obviously, I mean, it depends, right? I mean, in areas like Delhi and Andhra Pradesh, we get selection ratio as high as 80% or 70% also. But with this particular demographic, we didn't. And what we also realize is this is the exact demographic that we want to get into. We do not, we want to reach out to the most marginalized, right? I mean, let's say as a college, your focus is to get to the most, your focus is to get the brightest possible candidates. That's how you design your entrance examinations, and then basically give them education. Most of the colleges actually don't give education, in my opinion. It's just a peer effect because of which students end up learning. Uh,
Correct.
but with Navgurukul, I think our focus is extremely, I mean, it's just completely reverse of it. We want to
Correct.
reach out to the most marginalized student, irrespective of their academic levels. So we want to have a minimum, let's say, criteria on which we select, and then we reach out to the most marginalized who can reach out, who can fulfill this criteria. So one of the very obvious things is like, how do we prepare students who are not able to sort of fulfill our criteria to be able to do it at a later stage? And can we do
Right.
early stage interventions for them to be able to do that well? And that's how this learning Meraki app came in. So we have a volunteer driven model where they take live classes. We have content which we have developed for our residential courses. We have basically adopted it for the online format. Again, it's vernacular. On the phone itself, as I mentioned, the student can basically practice programming, typing, learn English through conversational English. There are volunteers assigned to them where both of them keeps talking for 14 different classes so that they develop confidence in spoken English particularly because it's a very essential interview cracking skill.
Right.
We provide them keyboards to basically learn how to type as well as programming. And the idea is that through this application they can get access to entry level jobs which need them to learn how to use computers for typing, or they can get into aspirational training careers like Navgurukul. And there are other organizations we are basically trying to work with in terms of getting our students admitted there. There's an organization called Hyperwords. It's an AI-based company out of Chennai. They're doing a similar program. Zoho Schools is doing a similar program. Freshdesk is doing a similar program. So we're essentially trying to also use Meraki to be able to identify candidates for these programs. And that's something which is still in progress, but hopefully it will happen soon.
Right, right. It will happen soon. All right. So the other program which you we already spoke about, which is Code India Fellowship. So I'm going to skip that question. Now Gurukul, when I was looking at it, supported by several partners on this journey. How important is your partner ecosystem towards your goals?
So I think we have been incredibly lucky. So when you said how was the journey, I think the first feeling that I shared was emotionally challenging. But I think the other feeling that I have gotten from my work in the last 5 years is we have been incredibly lucky. We have never had to reach out externally for funds. Almost all our donors and partners, they basically approached us and they expressed their interest, which essentially ensured a very strong interest alignment, right? Because the people who genuinely already felt interested and inclined and they came to us. We're supported by more than 100 plus volunteers. We've actually hired our own volunteers. We have hired, so some of these volunteers continue to lead our teams even while being volunteers. There's this volunteer, I mean, he still is a volunteer actually. There's this person who started donating us 10,000 rupees a month, and now he leads as a volunteer one of our teams, and he's a very senior fellow with I think more than 18 years of experience in backend systems and technologies.
Wow.
So I think we've been incredibly lucky to sort of find all of this support from individuals and the donors and the partners. In fact, all the admissions, which is one of the hardest problems I mentioned, we essentially do not have any on-ground team. All of these admissions happens through our partners who are working on ground, and they basically help us identify these candidates who basically give the test through our technology. So that significantly reduces our efforts and is able to make sure that we're able to reach out to pan India for mobilization without having a team for that. So I think and we are sort of an organization which believes very strongly in being an open organization, transparent organization, and making sure that the people who are coming in, they actually can work at a very senior level, even if they're a volunteer. So we don't say, oh, you are a volunteer, this is just where you can be confined to. Literally, as I mentioned, the volunteers who are leading our products or leading our teams. In fact, most of the lab products that we're developing, they're heavily invested on by the volunteers who are spending a lot of time to make it happen. So I think, yeah, so we are very fortunate from the lenses of having partners. In fact, when you mentioned Rahul, so I happened to meet Rahul about a year ago online myself. And then Rahul sort of was running his own organization, and then we sort of merged all the efforts to sort of do it together. So again, that's sort of very rare in non-profit sector because people have their own vanities and their ways of working.
Right.
But I think I've been again extremely fortunate to have someone like Rahul on board Navgurukul, who basically sort of combined whatever he was doing, his team, and we sort of came together, sort of merged it, and now we are sort of working on these things together. But yeah, our ethos as an organization is to partner as much as possible. even our online application Miraki, we don't feel it's Navgurukul's application. It's a collective. It's an open source collective. We have more than 24 partners who are using this application with their students right now. And we basically call all of us as co-hosts, and Navgurul is one of the hosts basically for that application. But the idea is that as a non-profit organization, we have to realize that alone we cannot do much, right? I mean,
Correct.
it's a combined effort of multiple individuals and organizations and partners together, with whom we can sort of make any tangible impact to the society.
Absolutely. I think it applies to everybody these days, individuals, for profit, non-profit, not for profit, everybody. You cannot do it alone. You have to be together and get stuff done. All right, fantastic. Your kids or alumni are hired by corporates and SMBs across the country. So, what has been the success rate with the placements? Is it 100%?
So we do 100% placements. Yeah, we get 100% placements. So only thing is if a student drop out in between,
Okay.
then we can't sort of take care of that. But there are cases where the student drop out and they basically went to their homes and we supported them while they were at home. But the students who have stayed in the campuses, we do 100% placements.
Fantastic. That is the best answer entire evening, actually. I'm so happy to hear that. All right. So last two questions before I leave you. The second last question which I have is, how can individuals like myself, for example, or organizations join hands with Navagurukul on this fantastic journey that you're on? Can you hear me, Abhishek?
Yeah. So I think, as I mentioned, like most of the work that we do, volunteers and individuals are a very important part of our. Yeah, I can hear you very well. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. I can. There's a lag, but it's okay. Continue.
Hello. Hello. So I think as an organization, as I mentioned, like volunteers and individuals are basically at almost all the levels of our organization. They're working as team leads, and it is across the organization. It may be because they're really good at, or they have a lot of experience with HR, or they may have experience with back end or front end, or anything at all. So basically, we have very strong connections with our volunteers. Then for every team member that we have assigned them an external coach or an advisor, which is again an external individual who's sort of supporting them in their journey. So that is another way to engage with the organization. The people who are helping us with communication, the people who are helping us with, I mean, you name any problem, right? I mean, outreach, growth, strategy. We have basically people helping us out a lot. Then we have people who basically help us with review. So I mean, for some of our senior team members, we've essentially created a review committee, and again, like that typically has let's say two individuals in each committee, where they review the work of that person on a monthly basis or so, to help them improve their quality of work. So I mean, so as an organization, as I mentioned, like a lot of work that we do, it's out there, it's transparent, it's open. Our Slack channel is also something where we invite people to sort of join and sort of directly be in touch with team. We share monthly updates directly in terms of how people can help. So if anyone is interested, they can just write to me on LinkedIn or my Gmail, and I would be happy to sort of send those emails to them so that they understand what kind of areas of where we need help essentially are actively coming up. But irrespective if someone is interested in exploring or contributing or understanding what's going on, they're more than welcome. They can just go to a website, click on volunteer, and sort of fill the form, and immediately within 1 or 2 days we'll reach out.
Right, right. All right. So it's seriously fabulous that I got this opportunity to chat with you. And my final question for you today is about COVID-19. I ask all my guests, how has COVID-19 impacted Abhishek, and how has COVID-19 impacted Navagurukul, and how is 2021 going so far?
So, COVID clearly was extremely tough, especially because when you're working in social space, it actually becomes harder because you get to see a lot more than what typically people would, right? I mean, you have access to people who are facing an entirely different magnitude of problems that you probably don't even get to hear in news.
Right.
There were so many of our own students and alumni whose entire family lost jobs, and they were really struggling to also just eat, food. and unfortunately, that was not very uncommon in our country, especially at the peak times of COVID. So I think emotionally it was extremely challenging and hard, and there was so little that we could do, right? I mean, what we could see in terms of the problems, very little of that we could essentially do. I think somewhere in the if we just remove COVID from the situation, I mean, we are aware of the plethora of problems out there, but we consciously say this is what I can do, and I'll focus my energies on that. But with all the chaos that COVID brought in, I think that distinction or just saying that I'm going to limit my energies to this was not feasible. So I think there's a lot of exhaustion. I was all over everywhere, emotionally not just struggling with my own needs, with my own well-being, but also struggling with what I should be doing. Should I focus on Navgurukul? Should I focus on the relief efforts going on? Should I focus on bringing sort of doing some things for our alumni or our student base, because they also need that kind of help. So I think it became really messy and hard. Personally, also, then obviously there were a lot of cases in my family. My partner who I'm getting married to coming month, she was admitted in hospital for about 26 days. And the most horrible, time when you do not know when the person is going to come back. There were moments when you felt about if they're going to come back, right? I mean, and it even feels extremely depressing to even think of that question, right? I mean, fortunately, that was just momentary, and after 26 days, 26 she came back, and she's doing much better now. So I think COVID that way is extremely hard, especially for people who are more vulnerable because of whatever reasons.
Right.
So that was personally. I think professionally, as an organization, there's obviously certain overlap with what I said personally. But apart from that, I think there was obviously the struggle of how do we keep our centers on and functioning, because most of the residential places during the COVID were basically being shut down or being closed. We didn't want to basically shut them down because we realized that this is very important for our students, actually even more important than before pandemic. And fortunately, it paid us off well. I mean, many of our students basically got jobs during pandemic, and they could support their families, which they could not have otherwise. And most likely, they would have gotten married, especially because I'm not sure if I've been through these articles, but the marriages are happening far more sooner, now because of pandemic. Parents do
Right.
not know what to do with their children, especially the women children. Because earlier, at least there was this, this anchor that I'm going to study, I have to do this. Now those anchors are being lost. People are not returning to schools or even colleges, wherever the schools and colleges are also opening. So I think we are even further important at this juncture. So instead of closing something like Navgurukul, we need to have a strategy through which we work, and that's why I think government has recognized our work. We are opening 3 centers in coming 6 months with 3 different governments, which are basically going to be supported by governments, and they are going to be functional throughout. They have taken that commitment from them, and that the entire idea is we are going to make sure that the students are vaccinated and all of that. Many things we are going to make sure as precautions, but we want these centers to function properly and get student jobs. And I think as a sector, IT sector has obviously blossomed, right? So I mean, from the perspective of getting jobs for our students and alumni, it has just gotten super trivial for us right now. Um, so I think so there's a clearly a higher demand from parents also, because some extent, I mean, they've started understanding that there's these kind of jobs that the students can get into. So I think in terms of admissions, it's sort of easier to convince parents, but obviously then also it's harder because it's COVID and parents do not want to send their daughters in COVID times, because health is obviously a big issue, and if someone gets sick, what does it happen? So even right now, as we're talking, there are cases in our Pune campus which are COVID positive, and we've put the entire campus in isolation. A lot of things are happening, and a lot of mitigation steps are needed to be done, which we have taken. So,
Right.
so I think many steps we had to take to sort of make sure that these campuses continue to function, and hopefully that will be our direction, because I don't feel that COVID is going to go away anytime soon.
Right.
Unfortunate as
Absolutely.
that is, it is the harsh truth.
I know, I know. Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Abhishek. I am pretty sure you are gonna fly higher and higher going forward. I'll be looking forward to your exciting journey ahead, and I want you to stay safe and please take some rest. You look so tired. Before marriage, at least look like a guy who's ready for marriage. Put on some
Yeah.
weight and go for some massage or facial and stuff like that, and, and be prepared for it. I wish you a very happy married life in advance. Take care of your fiance, and speak to you soon.
Thanks so much. It was lovely being here. Thanks so much, Vivek.
Thank you so much. All right, so that was Abhishek. How wonderful is that, right? I don't know how he must be 20 years younger to me, maybe, but these are the kids who inspired me, I love talking to them. That's why I run this show every Friday. Thank you. If you have tuned in today, this video will be up on my YouTube channel tomorrow, day after. And this month, there are amazing things happening on SMB Talks. There is one of the biggest VC venture capitalist mentor of startup world coming on my show from India. He will have a lot to speak to all of the entrepreneurs out there. So tune in every Friday and happy weekend. Stay safe, wear your mask, sanitize, stay at home, have fun with your family. God bless.